following discussion gives a personal overview of the endpoint assessment process for a Customer Service Level 2 Practitioner Apprentice.
All the work that I had already produced, and I tried to pick evidence that not only supported one aspect of the portfolio but supported multiple. So even if I was vague in other areas, it could still be covered in multiple amounts of work.
So just to sum up, you would have had one piece of evidence, and that holistically met a lot of different boxes.
Yes.
Across skills, knowledge and behaviour, would you say?
I did try.
How many pieces of evidence did you have in your showcase portfolio?
I had 12 pieces of evidence plus an appendix.
Okay. And are you able to explain what types of evidence you included within that?
I included observations, my own knowledge, questioning, different product evidence. So I did try and include a range of evidence there.
Okay. So when you're saying your own knowledge, can you expand upon that in just a little bit more detail?
So that'll be things that I've learned through the year of being an estate agent, which is new knowledge to myself, and have gradually compiled throughout the year that I think hits the target criteria for the portfolio.
Okay. And did that also include reflective accounts?
Yes, reflective accounts of my own experiences and evidence of my experiences, as well as questionings, answering obviously the pre-written questions to the best of my ability.
Okay. In terms of reflective accounts, and obviously we discussed this throughout the course over the course of the past year. So in terms of reflective accounts, what advice would you give to someone who was putting a reflective account together now?
Try and include as many different examples as you can to sort of cover yourself for all bases, whether it be that you have one example of dealing with a complaint, or you have two, try and just include more than one thing. If you're able to provide evidence of it, include it, because it does back up your work quite substantially.
So in terms of the meeting this morning, so tell me all about it. What time was your endpoint assessment booked for?
My endpoint assessment was booked for 9 o'clock just as the office opened. However, the assessor did get in about 15 minutes early, so I went down, offered a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, say hello and just kind of get comfortable with what we're going to run through during the observations. That is just letting me know that she will be writing notes, not to think that she's being ignorant by not always making eye contact. She's just making notes for her personal sake. Just running through the kind of things that may be asked, the course of the assessment, what we would do first, and just generally saying hello and getting to know each other a little bit before doing the assessment.
Okay. Did she ask for your ID?
Yes, gave ID before the start of the assessment, just so obviously she could prove that I was who I said I was, and that was done before any of the actual questioning or anything began.
That's fine. So when the observation was taking place, Ellie, did you talk the endpoint assessor through any tasks which you were completing at the time?
Yes, I talked her through most of what I was doing on the computer systems. I do obviously think with being all the different assessments that they could be doing in the different environments, we won't understand every single system that there is for different companies or things like that. So I ran it through what I was doing on our computer system, as well as why I was doing it. Obviously just backing up my own evidence as well, my own knowledge.
Okay. Did you get any feedback at the time during that observation?
No, during the observation, shouldn't expect feedback, didn't get any myself. Obviously all she did really say is not to be put off if she does write something down or doesn't write something down. Doesn't necessarily mean anything good or bad, and just kind of take it how it is, because you shouldn't expect feedback at the time.
Okay. And so did that person ask you any questions during the observation?
I was asked a couple of questions, just maybe to explain why I was doing one thing, or if everyone in the office would understand the abbreviations I was putting on the screen, which I just explained. Yes, it is inter-office communications. We do tend to all understand what the abbreviations mean, and just kind of explain myself a little bit further to make sure I wasn't being too vague with anything.
How did you feel during that observation? Did you experience any curveballs?
I was pretty comfortable through the majority of the actual observation. I did receive mostly quite good calls where I could explain more thoroughly my job role and the things that I take part in with auction and dealing with online inquiries. I didn't really have any curveballs except when we had a lady who was looking into renting a rental property and was a little bit sort of off about what she expected from the properties, trying to hide the fact that maybe she didn't work so she couldn't rent it. Other than that, just kind of dealt with that very positive customer service way.
Did you plan for the observation? So you knew that she was coming in at 9 this morning. Did you plan beforehand?
Yes, I sorted out everything that I would need for the observation the night before, so that's making sure that I had my portfolio ready and nearby, and making sure that I was all logged onto the computers. Obviously we had to do that again in the morning anyway because I automatically log you out after a certain length of time, but just making sure I was all prepared myself, getting in that little bit earlier than what I normally do at work so that I could get prepared in case she came in early, which she did. She got in about 15 minutes early. Just making sure that you look a little bit more presentable, maybe that will take a little bit more time with your appearance on the day because you are supposed to look professional, and just making sure that you are ready so you don't have to kind of take your time or waste their time sorting yourself out in the morning.
So did you do a list?
I just kind of made note to myself what I needed to get done, and I went through that through the evening, so it was just ready to come and go by the time that I got in.
Great, okay, thank you, Ellie. In terms of your workplace professional discussion, was this carried out immediately following the observation?
Natalie, the assessor, took about 10 minutes to sit sort of separate from myself on the sofas in our little front area of the office, just to kind of prepare herself before I went for the professional discussion. At this time I just offered Natalie a cup of tea and she got herself ready for the kind of things she needed to ask, wrote up all her notes from the observation, then we went to a separate back office to do the professional discussion in a bit more private and quiet.
Had you ensured that you had booked that space previously?
Yes, I made sure that all my colleagues were aware that I needed that room. It was booked out in all the diaries, so knew I had the office to myself, so I wouldn't be interrupted by anyone knocking on the door or anything. Okay,
thank you. And how did you prepare for your professional discussion previous to this morning?
It was a lot of just running through questions that I thought maybe I asked to make sure I knew definitions of things and making sure that I had my portfolio ready, because you can have that during the observation, just making sure all my evidence was labelled so I knew where to look for everything should she ask about it, and generally just making sure that I was sort of confident in myself in speaking about the things that I was speaking about, making sure I knew everything that I needed to.
And so how helpful was it? You know how we've had mock professional discussions together on possibly about 3 different occasions, so with me and also with one of my colleagues, just general practice questions which we assumed may possibly be asked. How helpful was that process for you, and how similar was it to what the actual endpoint assessor ran through with you?
It was quite helpful because it was very similar to what the actual endpoint assessment professional discussion seemed to be. You both ran through the sheet when you start the conversation, just run through everything that's going to happen in the discussion. So that was very similar. It was quite easy to kind of pick up where we were going. The questions in some cases were quite similar, and defining things, make sure that anything I was maybe a little bit vague on in my portfolio was entirely covered. So it's all information I already knew. You weren't asked anything that you wouldn't know from your portfolio, and it was good to be prepared.
Thank you. And so can you remember what types of questions, so just as an example, a general question which you may have been asked during that PD?
An example of it was just to define sort of the difference between internal and external customers and the different needs that they have, and different means of communicating with them, sort of your professionalism in that. So that was quite just easy one to go through if you know your definitions, just making sure obviously you discuss how they're external, how they've got slightly different needs to the people who work internally to the company.
Did you have your manager with you during your professional discussion?
No, I believe it is an option to have them there, but I had mine by myself, just with myself and the assessor.
Why was that? Did you just feel more comfortable?
Yeah, I was just more comfortable knowing that there was less people listening to exactly what I say, and there was less eyes and ears on me.
Yeah. So better for you.
Yeah.
Just your preference, really, I suppose. Yeah, great. And did you have to refer to your portfolio during the discussion?
I did have it in front of me, however, I think I only referred to it a couple of times just to make sure I was where I thought I was in my definitions, to make sure I wasn't getting anything mixed up. I think I only checked 1 or 2 things. Other than that, it was handy to have because I knew if I did need it, it was there, and that was sort of a little bit of comfort there. But other than that, it was just sort of check to make sure something was right.
Did the endpoint assessor refer to your portfolio at any point?
Yes, at the end of the professional discussion there were just a couple of questions they had in regards to the portfolio. For example, I believe one of them was in regards to our complaints procedure. Just wanted to clear up or ask a little bit more in depth about how that would happen in terms of elevating a complaint, and which I did run through. I referred to the portfolio in terms of just checking that it was everything that I said it was on the sheet, but other than that it was just a few questions referring to it.
And then was it just a case of standard questions which were asked about your knowledge, skills and behaviours?
Yeah, it was just sort of standard things from the questions that you could be assessed on.
How would you say that you had found the process overall, endpoint assessment?
I found that I shouldn't have been as worried as I was. The assessor was lovely. She did make me feel very comfortable as well. It was over a lot faster than I thought it was going to be.
How long did it last, please, Ali? So how long was your observation?
My observation was about an hour, and the professional discussion was about an hour as well. I did worry myself that it was going to feel like forever, but it didn't. Just actually went over quite quickly.
What might you have done differently, if anything?
If anything, I may have just gone through questions a little bit more myself in my head to make sure everything I was going to repeat back to her made sense. Because I know I can sometimes blabber on when I'm nervous, so I could have ran over those a little bit more just to make sure everything made sense. But other than that, I was quite happy with what I did.
What words of advice would you give to someone who is about to go through the same process soon?
Just make sure that you know everything that is in your portfolio. Make sure so you know what you've included, so you don't suddenly have a question sprung onto you that you don't know how to answer because you've only maybe read the work once since you've actually submitted it. Just make sure that you know exactly what's going into it, and prepare yourself the night before to make sure you've got everything you need so you're not rushing around when they come in.
How do you feel that your apprenticeship has helped you regarding your next steps?
I feel like it's been particularly helpful in this business because it is life skills that I will need. Being in estate agency teaches you about things that I will need, mortgages, solicitors, stuff I will need one day. In terms of the apprenticeship, it sort of reinforces my own knowledge because I have been able to go back over everything I've learned through the course of the year. So I do think it'll be quite handy more later in life, as well as getting the qualification, which I will need when I go off to uni, and need obviously more qualifications to get a job when I go down there as well.
Thank you, Ellie. Well done.
Thank you very much.